Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Space Beagle, its 5-year mission, etc., etc. That might give you a clue to one of the novels I'm going to talk about today. Now I've finished the, I put the Hugo Winners project on hiatus. I find I'm free to read whatever I please, so I did. And I picked out a couple of authors that I've heard favourably mentioned in dispatches, Harry Harrison and A.E. Van Vogt. Now, I've not read any novels by either of these, although I am familiar with some of their shorter fiction. And first of all, we'll take a look at Voyage of the Space Beagle. We'll do that one first. Okay, there we are. That's a later edition of that, which is a 1959 Panther edition. That's the one I actually read, but it's as you can see, it's a bit of a beat up old copy, but it's from 1959, and I love everything from that period. So I decided to read that one. Anyway, I digress. Right, Voyage of the Space Beagle. I normally shy away from space opera, but I know A.E. Van Vogt is quite well thought of, so I thought I would dip my toe in the shallow end of the space opera pool, shall we say, and brave the storm. Okay, now this, just give you a bit of history of this before we start. This is generally acknowledged as the novel that Gene Roddenberry used as his inspiration for the first Star Trek series in the 60s. And it's easy to see why when you read it. It's a fix-up, what I call a fix-up. It consists of 4 stories that originally appeared in the pulp magazines. And it's re-edited together to form a novel, that's not disjointed. And of course, it was ideal for science fiction writers at the time because they got paid for their 4 stories in the magazines, and then they got paid again with very little effort when it appeared in mass market paperback. And so the book itself, therefore, is divided into 4 separate sections, all of which involve a space entity or an alien whose intentions are not exactly honourable, shall we say. I won't go through all the different facets of the 4 stories because that's all I need to tell you, really. But the story mainly involves the Space Beagle and its crew, who are all chemically castrated because of the long voyage, and they're all scientists, and their job is to go and see if they can find anything out there, which of course they do. Now the protagonist of the book is Elliot Grosvenor. Now, whereas all the other scientists are specialists in their own field, he practices, if that's the word, science, a more advanced science called nexialism, which combines all the sciences, and he has a certain psychic ability and also practices the dark art of hypnosis. So, he's a bit of an all-rounder, shall we say. And a lot of the book involves the politics aboard the ship, of the crew, the captain and Elliot Grosvenor. it's not a long novel. It's quite readable in as much as it doesn't go on forever like some of the Doc Smith novels seem to. Yeah, I mean that's basically it. There's not really much to say about the plot because it's fairly straightforward. Now, my impressions of the book were quite favourable actually for someone who's not a big, well, not at all a space opera fan. The four different stories are a bit samey, shall we say. It's about aliens trying to either take over the ship or draw them in to trap them. And the onboard politics that I mentioned earlier is quite fascinating. And it's, overall I found it to be a quite entertaining read. Certainly a lot different to what I expected anyway, let's put it that way. It does have its fault. I mean, it's quite well written, but it does have its faults in that a lot of the dialogue, it was written in the 50s, remember, is a bit stilted and dry, but I've seen worse in more contemporary novels, so there's not really any great beef there. I don't really have much more to say about it except that I found it quite entertaining. So on my usual scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, I'll give it a 7. It's certainly, I mean, Van Vogt wrote another famous novel called Slan, which, I'll probably try at some point, but at the minute I'm trying to cover as many authors as I can that I haven't read. So yeah, there's Voyage of the Space Beagle. Now, I'm really surprised I haven't read any Harry Harrison because he's written quite a lot in the 70s maybe. Timeline might be a bit off there, but I seem to remember most of his stuff from the 70s. Death World, there's 3 Death World novels, and of course he did the Stainless Steel Rat novels as well, of which there are quite a few. I've never been really attracted to those, so that's why I picked the first of the Death World series to have a bash at. As you can see, it's quite a thin volume. It only runs 250 pages, so it didn't take me too long to read. This is an old, as you can see, it's an old Penguin edition. I tend to like the older editions personally. Now this one, again, the plot is fairly straightforward. The protagonist, Jason Denault, is a psi and a gambler, and he uses his psi abilities to kind of cheat at gambling or work the odds in his favour, shall we say, because of his psychic abilities. And he's confronted during one of his gambling sessions by Kirk. That's K-E-R-K. Not the captain. Who comes from the planet Pyrrhus. Now, it transpires that Kirk requires him, on pain of death, to win a large amount of money for him at gambling, and which I think it's to pay off a debt of some description. I can't remember quite what. And Denault manages to do this, and he learns that the planet Pyrrhus, where Kirk comes from, is a very dangerous place. The titular death world, in fact, where all the animals and plants are absolutely fatal to human life. So, Denault kind of thinks, well, that sounds interesting. I think I'll have a look at that. In his hubris, decides that it would be a good adventure or whatever, and so he sets off with Kirk. When he gets there, he finds that yeah, things are rather grim for the human inhabitants. And the book is mainly about Denault trying to find a way to solve the problem via a historical document that he turned up of the first settlers. He decides that he will try and find a solution to this never-ending battle between the Pyrrhons and the life on Pyrrhus. That's about it for the plot, really. Now, my impressions of the book were that it's not a good book, it's not a poor book, it's not a great book, it's not a terrible book. In fact, it's one of those very rare books that I read that I found to be the very dictionary definition of average. Now, that doesn't happen to me too often. I often like a book, or I don't. There's an absolute normally. But with this one, I kind of liked it, but at the same time, there was nothing in there that was particularly groundbreaking or more, interesting enough to make me think that it was, better than average, shall we say. My impressions of it basically were, I like the main character, Jason Denault, although Kirk was a heavy, if you like, in terms of villains, he was quite an interesting character as well. But there was some. There's a lot of description in there of the animals and plant life actually battling against the Pyrrhons, which it went on a bit, and I found that a bit distracting. The denouement, that's a nice word, isn't it? Anyway, the final, what should we say, the final result of Denault's desire to sort this out is a bit, a bit cheesy. But I won't go into any of that stuff because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who might decide to read it. But as I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, it's got to be the 5, unfortunately. I mean, if I was to reconsider that, I think I maybe lean more towards a 6 than a 4, but 5 it's got to be. It's not. I would imagine it's not one of Harry Harrison's best. I know that the novel he wrote, Make Room, which was filmed as Soylent Green back in the 70s, is one of his most famous, well thought of books. I don't think I've read it. I'm going back a long way when we talk about the 70s, but no, I can't remember reading it. But there again, it's another one that I might have a look at some point. Okay, so folks, so that's my impression of the two post-Hugo books that I've read. Strangely enough, I would say that Voyage of the Space Pig, although it's a space opera, is better than some of the Hugo winners that I've read. Death World, perhaps not so much. So yeah, that's all I have to say, really. Next up, I've got a pickups video. This is a mishmash of shmup-related stuff, Destiny-related stuff, a few other bits and pieces, and I'll be along with that very shortly. But in the meantime, I thank you for watching, subscribing, commenting, sharing if you do. And I mean, this will be an ongoing sort of thing where I've just read another book recently, so I'll be doing that next time along with another one that I decide on, and that shouldn't be too long coming either. So yes, all I have to say is that leaves me to say until next time, bye bye now.